Hello, my name is Nancy Love, and I'm coming here today and offering this in memory of yet another woman who was murdered by her boyfriend or spouse. It is also dedicated to all human trafficking victims everywhere in the world who are many times in a situation very similar to that of a battered spouse. I have had a number of really bad roommates while I've been in Los Angeles the last 12 years, and that's why I have, serendipitously enough, quite a few friends on the Los Angeles Police Department force. About half my dear friends in this world are cops, and they work in LA, and they have told me that battered women, battered children, battered husbands when that happens, which is significantly more rare but does happen, and many human trafficking victims are basically in the same situation. They are all in what police call a hostage situation. And no, police usually don't come in with a SWAT team and break people out of these situations. The police tell you you're responsible for getting out of the situation yourself, even while telling you that they realize you are essentially being held hostage. Here's what a batterer or an abusive boyfriend or a human trafficker intent on keeping you prisoner so that they can profit from your pain and victimization will do. And particularly if you're a young person, listen very carefully, because if people knew then what they know now, many people would not have stayed in relationships or contexts in which they were so abused. But they just didn't know what was happening, and it can be very confusing. First of all, a batterer or a human trafficker intent on victimizing you and basically holding you captive is going to take advantage of your best traits. People who are victimized are often spiritual, they're often religious, they're often forgiving, they are often nurturing, they are often kind and generous people. And all of those traits, although they're wonderful traits that we all aspire to have, or at least many of us aspire to have if you're sane and rational and good, those are some of the same traits that can be used against you. I know of a woman whose husband was an abusive but well-known professional, and he once shoved a book in her face, almost breaking her nose with it, and screamed at her, "If only you were more Christ-like, you wouldn't bleed when I hit you." He said, "If only you were more Christ-like, you wouldn't bleed when I hit you." And the woman actually laughed at him and said that if only he were more Christ-like, he wouldn't hit her to begin with, and that Christ in fact not only bled when they nailed him to the cross, but he died. So to compare someone, negatively with Christ, Christ died when they hurt him. Don't go there. So religiosity, spirituality, forgiveness, nurturance, generosity, kindness, all of these can actually be used against you when someone is trying to manipulate you into trying to take responsibility for their for their crimes and you being their victim. Please keep in mind, if you look up the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for the Social Services, the DSM, Google DSM and you'll find Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. The definition for antisocial personality disorder does include always blaming the victim. A lot of criminals never ever admit that they were in the wrong. It was always the victim's fault. If they hit you, you made them do it. If they stole from you, you were stupid enough to let them. If you married them, for God's sake, then they can really tell you that you're stupid, because after all, you were stupid enough to marry someone as criminal as they were. Now, these people will try to isolate you. They will try to keep you from your family. They will criticize your friends. They will, if you're a straight female, they'll accuse you of being gay for your female friends, or having romantic romantic inclinations toward your male friends. I know that there are a lot of gay relationships in which violence takes place. My Los Angeles Police Department friends say that some of the gay domestic violence is worse. They said those people really kill each other when they get bad with each other. So if you're, whether you're a gay person or a straight person, an abusive person is going to try to manipulate you into social isolation, and they want to have you think of them as being your only source of information, possibly money, maybe housing. All these things are supposed to come just from that one person, and they don't want you to have other sources even of self-confidence and of information. They want to be your only source of all of that. Abusers and human traffickers intent on holding you captive are going to take your telephone or tell you they have hacked into it. I know of situations in which roommates have stolen cell phones, tapped those phones using software and subscription services available online, and then use those telephones. They're able to listen to every phone call, read every text, even commandeer incoming phone calls, and so forth. They will hack your computer. They will go through your personal files. They will steal your identity. They will apply for loans as you. Human traffickers and abusers both have the same pattern. They will try to keep you from going anywhere and getting help you need. They will, if they find out you've called, say, a specific individual or organization asking for help to get free, they will actually contact that organization or individual and tell them you're crazy and they're innocent and you're not telling the truth. And they will stalk you online and in person. I know of one situation where a human trafficker lured someone into his home, and he made a fake Facebook profile so he could read every one of her Facebook posts. And like, you'd think he'd have better things to do, but oh well. And he also would follow her whenever she walked to a bus stop, wait in his car until the bus came and got her, follow the bus until she got off, and then follow her in person to see where she was going when she was using the bus. These people are very methodical. They are ardent. They are ardent in their pursuit of control. There is a lot more to this, and I will make another video soon about this whole issue. But there's one thing I want people to know. If you get involved in a relationship, either a romantic relationship or simply a roommate context, if you just become a roommate for someone who tries to do these things to you, socially isolate you, one thing I didn't mention is they will, if you have a vehicle, like that one that just passed, if you have a vehicle, sometimes they will disable the vehicle. I know of a person who was involved in a human trafficking victimization scenario, and her landlord broke her car 3 times in 3 months. He would break it. He stole her car key, made a duplicate so he could get into her car at any time he wanted to, and he kept leaving the lights on all night. She would make sure that she had locked her car, and she said that time after time after time she would go out in the morning, find that the lights had been left on, the car was unlocked, and her battery was dead, and then she had to depend on her landlord to come and jump the car so that she could actually leave for that day. Well, he finally admitted that he was doing it on purpose, and that he had a key to her car, and he was doing it on purpose to keep her limited in her options and to keep her paralyzed and staying there. Speaking of paralysis, they will also physically injure you. Abusers and human traffickers hell-bent on keeping you their victim will physically injure you so that you can't leave. Maybe you can't even walk anymore. But they want to keep control over you and be your end-all, be the whole universe to you. They want to make sure that you remain their victim and never get free. One of my cop friends, one of my Los Angeles Police Department friends, also said that the minute they threaten you if you leave is the day that's definitely what they call a hostage situation. A human trafficker or an abuser who tells you that if you do manage to get away from them and move out from under their control, they will find you. They've got friends, maybe they've got a gang, maybe they claim to be members of a gang, and they will find you, and they're going to get help to do it, and they will kill you and your children and your pets. That is the day that you, according to my Los Angeles Police Department buddy, are damned if you do and damned if you don't. Because you're already afraid to stay. They've tapped your phone, they've isolated you socially, they may have physically assaulted you, they've made you terrified of leaving. But the day that they convince you that if you do in fact somehow miraculously succeed in leaving, they will find you and they will kill you, that is the day that you are officially damned if you do and damned if you don't, because they've convinced you to be afraid to stay. But now they've convinced you to be afraid to leave. I am really upset today because I read this morning that yet another beautiful young woman was murdered by her boyfriend. And that didn't have to be. If her family and friends had realized this whole pattern, if they'd seen her socially isolated and victimized psychologically first usually and physically later, then they might have been able to see it. Young people, if you can hear the sound of my voice, consider if the relationships that you're involved in follow this pattern and get away now. Get help from your parents, school counselors, your friends, your family, anyone you can. But if you find that this is an all too familiar pattern that I'm discussing here, you need to get out of that relationship now. People in Los Angeles and other major cities, I need you to understand that Los Angeles, at least, is considered by the district attorney's office to be the North American capital of human trafficking. The North American capital of human trafficking. And they're using online sites like Craigslist and other online roommate finding sites to lure people who are in an emergency into their homes. If you place a emergency housing wanted ad, if you say that you're disadvantaged in some way, that can attract these predators. And once they get you into their home, they know that you don't have the wherewithal to leave. Maybe you don't have a vehicle, any money, or any place else to go, and they know that. And they are actually using some fairly strong surgical level anesthesias to drug people into oblivion. Once they have you in their home, they can drug your beverages, they can drug your food, they can slip in while you're asleep and inject you with something that's going to keep you unconscious while they rape you and traffic you to strangers. I know of a woman who had a roommate who did this to her, and she said that he admitted it, and she didn't want to believe that he was really doing that. But then a total stranger walked up to her in the street and said that he had raped her where she lived, and this total stranger, a filthy, drug-addled man who was obviously, had a lot of problems of his own, this man actually knew her address and described in detail where she lived and how it worked, to where he had paid either drugs or money to her own roommate. And then her roommate allowed someone who was a total stranger to her rape her while she was unconscious. Neighbors also confirmed to this woman when she asked neighbors that her roommate had gone around in the neighborhood offering the opportunity to rape her unconscious body to neighbors. And they also said that they were afraid to talk to the police because he had threatened to kill them if they admitted to the police what they had heard and offered to be witnesses in his trial. Human trafficking is something that only toilet scum would engage in. To traffic in human beings, to have slaves, to try to get people victimized, to drug, rape, traffic, all of this is some of the most unconscionable, unholy, scumbag type of behavior that I personally have ever even heard of. And it embarrasses me. And I think it's a shame. It's a shame on Los Angeles that we are the human trafficking capital for this entire North American continent. We need to clean this town up, and we need to get those bums out of here now. I am calling upon you to be more sensitive to the fact that victims of crimes are often victimized precisely and only because they're really good people. Spiritual, religious, generous, kind, nurturing, and forgiving. And those are exactly the kind of qualities that make a good, decent person prey to a predator. There, I've said it. Consider what I've said very carefully, and if you see yourself in one of these relationships, get out now. Get all the help you can get out. But for God's sake, please save your life. Because these people don't care at all about your life. One last point I will make. All of these people who are using drugs to keep victims either unconscious completely or so confused and addled while they're being raped that they don't even form memories of the event. Although they may have seemed to be awake, they were obviously drugged, drunk, or something, but memories don't form normally, so they can't serve as witnesses in their own victimization. These drugs tend to be surgical level anesthesia. These drugs are administered by amateurs who don't care whether or not they kill you with them. And these drugs damage the heart, damage the liver, and damage the kidneys. A person who intent on raping you but who is such a fucking coward that they want you unconscious so you don't even know it's happening and can't even try to defend yourself. This person doesn't care if you die of heart failure when they put their drugs in you. They just want what they want, and they're based entirely on greed and lust. Greed and lust. And they have no concern for your life whatsoever. They can cause permanent heart damage, permanent liver damage, permanent kidney damage, just for a few moments of their greed and their lust. And there have been people who've developed heart disease for the rest of their lives and became very frail because they had been drugged by people who didn't care if you died because they just wanted to victimize you. I'm a passionate person. I have a passion for compassion. So please forgive me for being emotional about this, but I believe in the brotherhood of man. I believe in something called the family of man. I believe that every person I have ever met was either my brother or my sister. Every person, no matter what you look like, no matter where you're from, if I ever encountered you, I considered you my brother or my sister, and that we're members of the family of humanity. And I am so tired of hearing about people who are so unconscionable that they would kill their own girlfriends and wives, or that they would drug, rape, and traffic people who have no reason to be this victimized. I detest human traffickers, and I consider them toilet scum that deserve to be flushed down the cosmos, down the toilet of the cosmos. We don't need one human being on this entire planet so corrupt that they would enslave other human beings. And we don't need one human being on this entire planet so corrupt that they would murder their own spouse, girlfriend, or boyfriend. There, I've said it. Thank you for letting me share that. This is Nancy Love, the Planet Peace Woman. More on this later.